This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, how the fugitive behind a double homicide on New Year's Eve evaded arrest for 5 years. Duplex dispute. Property owners win their case to reclaim their Dartmouth unit. And Citadel Pride. Meet the Halifax team behind an annual Pride hockey game.
The winds finally easing overnight and a calmer, quieter weekend on tap. Your full details are coming up.
Good evening. On New Year's Eve in Halifax, a man killed his girlfriend, her father, and then himself. It was another case of intimate partner violence. That man was a fugitive with an outstanding arrest warrant from Toronto. The CBC's Taryn Grant explains how someone could have evaded arrest for 5 years.
A few days after a double homicide on New Year's Eve in Halifax, we learned that the killer was a fugitive. Toronto police issued a warrant for Matthew Costain's arrest 5 years ago for firearms offences, but he was never arrested on that warrant.
And he never will be. Costain shot and killed himself shortly after killing his girlfriend and her father. How could a wanted man live free for 5 years without ever being caught?
Let's start with why Toronto police were looking for him in the first place. In August 2019, shots erupted in a packed Toronto nightclub. One person suffered life-threatening injuries, and several others were also injured. No one was immediately arrested, but police said there were many witnesses, and they called it a very solvable case. Sure enough, they arrested a man about a week later and laid charges. But a few weeks after that, they issued a warrant for another man, Matthew Costain. It's not clear what role Costain played in the shooting. Toronto police wouldn't give many details, beyond the fact that he was wanted for unspecified firearms offences. At some point after the shooting, Costain moved to Nova Scotia. But for 5 years, the warrant was never acted upon.
I spoke with a few lawyers about this, and they all pointed to one reason this might have happened. The police simply weren't trying very hard to find Costain. They didn't present this as a criticism. Police have limited resources, and there are a lot of active arrest warrants. Halifax police told me there are tens of thousands of them across Canada.
It's relatively easy to live as a fugitive as long as you don't get in trouble with the law again.
Halpern says there are a lot of things that don't necessarily require a criminal record check and wouldn't alert police to your whereabouts, including renting a place to live or getting a job. She says it's even easier if you move provinces, since police agencies in different jurisdictions aren't always talking to each other. And Costain did move provinces. But the warrant for his arrest was Canada-wide, so police in Nova Scotia should have been able to make the connection if they had had any interactions with him.
Halifax police say they never detained or arrested Costain for any other reason. Then came December 31st.
That's when Costain fatally shot his girlfriend, Coralie Alicia Smith, and her father, Bradford Coy Downey. That happened here, off Gottingen Street. Police arrived around 10:30 p.m. Then Costain killed himself here, somewhere near the Amera Oval, sometime in the next few hours.
It's easy to wonder if this might have been avoided if only Costain had been arrested on that 5-year-old warrant. But Halpern says it's not that simple.
I don't think that the warrant in and of itself was going to be the solution for what is a very, very complex problem around intimate partner violence.
Halpern says intimate partner violence stems from a lack of mental health support, poverty, and a suite of other societal issues. Things that time in prison don't address.
She says even if Costain had been arrested on that warrant, he probably would have been released at some point. And those big societal issues that drive intimate partner violence would be unchanged. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Halifax.
Property owners in Dartmouth will now be allowed to move a family out of a duplex after an earlier ruling preventing them from doing so was overturned in Nova Scotia Supreme Court. Gareth Hampshire reports.
The family of 6 will now have to leave the Dartmouth duplex they've been renting after their landlords won an appeal to be able to move in their daughter. A small claims court adjudicator previously said they could have difficulties finding another home during a housing crisis, and it was inappropriate to disrupt their 13-year tenancy. But a Nova Scotia Supreme Court judge decided however well-intentioned that interpretation was, it was incorrect. and risks a decision-making process which becomes vulnerable to one person's subjective views, slips towards a decision which is more arbitrary than judicial, and dramatically tilts the legislated balance between landlord rights and tenants' rights in favor of the tenant.
They're excited, obviously, to be able to assist their daughters going forward, assist them when they're starting their next chapter of their life, particularly their daughter that just recently got married.
The lawyer for the landlord says additional tests by the lower court as to whether taking back the unit is appropriate were never used before.
And so that portion of it was removed by the Supreme Court on appeal, and the focus then has gone back to what it was traditionally, in whether or not there's a good faith need for the unit for themselves or a family member, which was found to be the case here.
Nova Scotia Legal Aid represented the tenants. It respects the decision, but says the lower court did raise a critical issue many tenants are facing.
So the court was concerned about the lack of evidence of the housing crisis before them. It's not that we can't recognize that there is a housing crisis.
She thinks legislation could be changed to factor in the housing crunch. The tenants are disappointed and say they felt blindsided from the beginning of the process, but are now hoping to find a place that's bigger and works better for their family before they have to leave the unit in August. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, Halifax.
Maritimers in Los Angeles are sharing how they're being impacted by the historic wildfires there. The fires began earlier this week and have destroyed thousands of structures and killed at least 10 people. Nova Scotian and Academy Award winner Ben Proudfoot says 15 to 20% of his staff at Breakwater Studios have had to flee their homes.
So it is something that is touching everybody in the city. Everybody is either evacuated, packed to evacuate, or has gone down the thought path of, okay, what would I take with me if I have to go? Many people have fled Los Angeles to surrounding cities and areas. It's a major disaster, and so many people have just lost everything.
Proudfoot says that there's a lot of bravery in the city with firefighters, police, and utility workers. Scott Tingley, the manager of forest protection at the Department of Natural Resources, says the wildfires in California are a frightening reminder to Nova Scotians who lost their homes in forest fires 2 summers ago.
It's devastating to watch. I mean, we lived it here in Nova Scotia just, not even 2 years ago. It's been a challenging couple of years across the country here with all our counterparts in Canada. So, our hearts and thoughts are out, watching out for everyone down in California, and just hoping everyone's making out all right. And it's pretty tough to watch.
A report on the province's response to the Tantallon and Shelburne fires made 50 recommendations. Tingley says by March, almost all of those suggestions will have been implemented. And residents whose homes were destroyed by the wildfires won't see major jumps in their tax bills. The province has approved amendments that will ensure properties that were rebuilt similar to their condition before the wildfires will not result in a tax increase. The property assessment would be based on 2023 prior to the fire and allow for capped increases in 2024 and this year. Former Liberal MLA Ben Jessam introduced legislation last spring that would have made the change then, but the PC government did not support it. All right, the weekend has arrived, and it sounds like we're in for a nice one.
We are. Calm conditions, light winds. Wouldn't that be something after a week where the wind has been pretty relentless? Yes, lighter winds will be welcomed, and so will a little bit of sunshine. And Saturday is the best chance of seeing that sunshine. We'll see the winds tapering off overnight tonight. Still a chance of a flurry in the morning for the North Shore. Flurries primarily in the morning, but could linger even into the afternoon for Cape Breton. Temperatures right around the freezing mark across the province, and there's a slight risk of a late day flurry in through the Yarmouth area, the Tri-County area, but that is an isolated chance there as well. More widespread chances for flurries on Sunday, but they will still be hit and miss, fairly isolated indeed. Temperatures right near the freezing mark yet again. And as we look ahead into next week, it does look like things are going to remain pretty quiet. A storm system passing to our south. We'll break it down with your full 7-day forecast coming up in just a few minutes, Amy.
I think we can handle that.
Yes.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, the Liberals promised to expand the hospital in Amherst 4 years ago. The PC government is now moving ahead with those plans. Jean LaRoche reports.
The hospital here in Amherst already has a new emergency department. It needed one after severe flooding damaged the space 2 springs ago. The plan now is to build out from here and double the size of the ER.
It will be designed to reduce wait times by improving patient intake, patient flow, and it will modernize the workplace for those that work here. But that's not all. Cumberland Regional will also be home to 12 new dialysis units.
This woman who lives just down the road is delighted she and others will be able to get dialysis in a brand new, double the size space. Before that temporary unit opened 2.5 years ago, she had to travel to Moncton 3 times a week for treatment.
I would set out at about 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning to be in Moncton for dialysis at 7, never knowing what the road conditions would be.
The physician in charge of the emergency department is eager to work in a bigger, more modern workspace.
And I think it's going to be really important for recruiting people. We've had some staffing issues as well with physicians, so I think this is going to be an important recruitment and retention piece of the puzzle.
The woman who oversees care in the region says the new facility should help with recruitment, retention of staff, as well as provide better care. As for the delay getting the project underway,
it takes time for the healthcare projects to make sure that we're taking into account population changes, changing healthcare needs for the future. So really reviewing the details, making sure we get it right.
Now that the planning is done, the hope is they can break ground here in March and have the new facilities up and running by 2027. Jean LaRoche, CBC News, Amherst.
One of Canada's military vessels designed for the north is heading south. HMCS Margaret Brooke departed from Halifax this morning. It's embarking on a 4-month mission all the way to Antarctica. Once there, HMCS Margaret Brooke will support Canada's Antarctic scientific research. It is the first time a Royal Canadian Navy vessel has visited the continent. Well, tomorrow evening at the Halifax Civic Centre, a group of high school hockey players is taking on a stereotype. The players are the driving force behind a pride event they hope will make a difference in their school. Take a look.
I believe we're the only high school in Nova Scotia doing something like this. It's the 2nd annual, and it's all thanks to our Youth Health Center coordinator, Aaron, who's put this together in coordination with the guys group that we have at our building, which is made up of a lot of athletes.
Our Hockey Pride Night is tomorrow night.
So we call it Guys Group, and pretty much it's just a space for people our age and that fit like our demographic, I'll say, to talk about issues and kind of just have a safe space.
And after spending a lot of time talking about how they would support a gay teammate, like if that day arrived, they brought to me this idea to do a Hockey Pride Night.
Our hockey team is like a family, and I would never want anyone to feel less than anyone else on our team.
Right now, like the fan base isn't very diverse, so like just like bringing some more LGBTQ people into it can really like help build the sport up and get some different kinds of people in it.
Big pony girl.
I think that fans are going to get a chance to see lots of groups of young people at their very best. So we're going to see our Citadel boys hockey team, who've got quite a winning record, play their very best hockey, but we're also going to see a very human side of them where they worked very hard to put this together, knowing that it's going to combat some stereotypes. And then we're also getting a chance to see choir and band. So if you want to see young people shine, that's the place to be Saturday night. Wear some rainbows.
It's where I belong down at.
I think it's really cool that this is being done at all, because a lot of people have this backwards notion of like there's the jocks and the queer people and the theater kids, and it's not High School Musical. We live in the real world, and there are so many amazing allies, and I think a night like this just shows how interconnected everyone can be, and it's really cool that 4 of the biggest groups in the school are coming together to make this one amazing event.
At the Pink Pony Club, I'm gonna keep on dancing down in West Hollywood. Here we go.
Yeah, it sounds like a great event. And there is the Halifax Hydro Stone. Ryan is up next with a full weather forecast for the weekend. It sounds like a good one. We'll see you in a little bit. Yeah, so it's sounding like a great weekend to get outside and not with a shovel in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. That is typically how we get together outside, digging each other out. But yeah, for sure, it's going to be a nicer weekend for this time of year, really about as good as it gets. I'm sure a few folks likely hoping for, wishing there was a bit more snow on the ground so they could get out and enjoy that way.
It's early days yet.
There's lots of time, for sure. And so for those especially who are a little bit weary about, with snow underfoot, won't be any issues with that in that regard this weekend. In most cases, anyway. Have a look at the temperatures out there right now. You can see it's 3 at Canso, 3 at Sable as well, and Westport also at 3. Those are our 3 hot spots across the province right now. Most of us in that 0 to 1 to 2 range, and we look at those winds. Boy, have they been persistent today, haven't they? And all week, really. That's, again, one of the big central themes of this weekend is the winds easing, especially for Saturday, and will be not nearly as breezy for Sunday. Have a look at the sustained winds right now in that 20, 30, 40 range. And we're looking at those gusts in the 50, 60, even 70 to 80 kilometer per hour range across Cape Breton. Those are going to taper off as that low starts to depart. Some pretty gusty winds in and around the Gulf of Maine right now as well in the Bay of Fundy. Couple of flurries out there, no doubt, but most of the action is now moving out and into Newfoundland. You can see a double-barreled low at this point, but this entire upper-level low, which has been swirling around all week, is on its way out. Area of high pressure moving in. That is settling things down. And as we move into the a little bit further to the west, this low here, this has been bringing snow as far south as places like Atlanta, Georgia, where there was no school today. 5-10 centimeters, that's enough to shut things down there, of course. And that system, that storm, is going to be tracking well to our south thanks to this area of high pressure keeping it there, though this trough holding hands with it will be moving through the region and bringing us that increased cloud and that chance for a flurry, especially for Sunday. Note temperatures mild in Alberta right now, -7, Regina -13 in Winnipeg. And as we look here across the Maritimes, we're talking about temperatures tonight, which are going to be in that 0 to -2 range. The winds becoming light for the mainland, still persisting for a good portion of tonight, sustained near 30, gusting 40 to 50 for Cape Breton. And you can see the flurries here into the mix. Very isolated chances for flurries tomorrow in the northeast and across Cape Breton, but certainly the chances there with that northwest wind. Late day risk starting to squeak up into the Digby, Yarmouth, Shelburne County areas. That's going to be the chance for the latter half of the afternoon. But again, it's an isolated chance there as well. Temperatures right around the freezing mark tomorrow for all. Not very confident we'll see much in the way of sun at all for Cape Breton tomorrow. The winds will become light though, and we'll see a better chance for some sun into central parts of the mainland and a chance for some sun into the morning hours for western parts of the mainland. But it does look like that cloud will likely build into the afternoon, especially into the Tri-County area where there is that chance of a flurry. Clouds more likely to dominate on Sunday as that storm passes to our south, and we're at least under the influence of this trough that's going to be moving through, which will bring some northerly winds back into the mix, sustained back in that 15, maybe 20 range. So again, breezier than Saturday, certainly, but not as strong as it has been for much of this week. And you can see some flurries certainly possible blowing in those onshore northerly winds into Sunday. And then as we look into the Monday time period, I think the clouds still, again, a little on the dominant side, as has been the case all week. And then as we look ahead into the Tuesday time period, that's when we'll bring in a better chance of flurries again, Tuesday and Wednesday. But this is not a system to write home about by any stretch of the imagination. And so, yeah, we're pretty quiet here over the next 7 days with that storm passing to the south on Sunday and then that weak little disturbance coming in Tuesday into Wednesday. Could see some bands of stronger flurries on Wednesday, but again, nothing to write home about, Amy.
That sounds all right to me. Thanks,
Definitely.
Ryan.
Thank you.
Coming up, widespread damage as wildfires rage in LA and 150,000 residents remain under evacuation orders. Welcome back. Winds fanning the Los Angeles wildfires eased today, allowing firefighters to make progress. But that progress is only beginning. The winds could resume, and the damage is already staggering. More images emerged today of entire communities reduced to ashes. The two largest fires have destroyed an estimated 10,000 structures. As of this morning, 10 deaths have been recorded. The Palisades fire is now 8% contained, the Eaton fire 3%, with a new third fire 35% contained. And looking ahead, winds are expected to strengthen early next week. Halifax native and Oscar-winning filmmaker Ben Proudfoot joins us now from Los Angeles. So first off, could you get us situated? Where are you in relation to the fires?
Yeah, so I live in North Hollywood, which is near Studio City, which is kind of halfway between the two major fires, Altadena in the east and Pacific Palisades in the west. And there was a fire called the Sunset Fire that was very close to us here in the Hollywood Hills, but it has thankfully been doused. But we're kind of in the middle between the two.
Can you describe what the mood is like in LA at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, this is a major historic disaster. You know, forest fires and wildfires in the past, maybe you heard of a friend of a friend who happened to be evacuated. Our company, Breakwater Studios, like 15-20% of our staff has been evacuated. So it is something that is touching everybody in the city. Everybody is either evacuated, packed to evacuate, or, you know, has gone down the thought path of, okay, what would I take with me if I have to go? Many people have fled Los Angeles to surrounding cities and areas. It's a major disaster, and so many people have just lost everything. Family homes just totally gone, burned to the ground.
Well, what have the last few days been like for you? How are you coping?
I mean, we've been very lucky and safe. We've taken in some friends who were evacuated, you know, preparing. I mean, I'm a documentarian, so we were busy getting all the hard drives and all of our archives from the past 10 years into vehicles if it needs to leave, people's family archives and photos that they've lent to us, make sure that those are safe, making sure everybody on our staff and community is safe. You know, I'm a part owner of a restaurant in our neighborhood in Los Feliz, so making sure that everybody is good there, and many people without power who needed to come there to charge their phones or you know, have a meal. So just doing my best to stay upbeat and alert, and you know, stay on top of everything, and if we need to go, be ready for it.
Well, the folks that you know that have had to flee, are their homes still standing? Do they have anything to go back to?
Yeah, nobody in our immediate circle, you know, at the company has had any major property loss, but certainly there are people that I know, friends of mine, who they've lost their homes. But thankfully, most of the folks that are in our immediate circle, their homes are okay for now. You know, these fires are still going. We've been lucky with the winds have really tamed down. That was what was so difficult at the beginning of this, is there was recorded gusts of up to 99-mile-per-hour winds, well beyond hurricane force. So everything on the wind side, thankfully, has been tamped down, and the air support has been able to hold things back. But everything is sort of with the asterisks of, for now, it's not over yet.
Well, where will you go if you have to leave? Do you know?
You know, there's only a couple of options. You know, you can go south, you can go east. I mean, it kind of depends on where the freeways and the roads are open. But luckily, you know, having been here for a number of years, have a lot of friends who have opened their homes, and that's sort of like a mark of the past few days. Is you've seen extraordinary generosity, people opening their homes, people checking in on each other. I mean, there's been an extraordinary amount of just communication and checking in, not only from people here in Los Angeles, but from around the world. And I think that's a beautiful silver lining to show the community that is here.
I understand you have some Canadian guests with you too, so that was probably a bit eye-opening for them.
Yeah, their flight. We were going to go to Big Sur for a few days, but I don't think that's going to happen. But they've got a front row seat to this disaster, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. All right. Well, Ben, thank you so much for talking to us today, and please stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, the race is on. Federal Liberal leadership hopefuls have 2 weeks to declare their candidacy. And no penalties. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump gets no jail time or fines in his felony hush money trial. Welcome back. 4 days after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his pending resignation, attention has turned to the bid to replace him as Liberal leader. The rules are out, but who is in the race? Ashley Burke has the latest.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hi, everybody. Another high-profile minister now out of the running to replace Justin Trudeau.
I was really torn about this decision because, to be frank, I think that our chances were really, really high.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister says she wants to be the first woman to lead the Liberal Party, but can't.
Canadians are anxious when they hear President President-elect Trump, saying and restating again his threats. So I decided to put my country first, and I decided to do my job.
That's why another minister, who's now facing calls to reconsider, already bowed out too.
I will be solely focused on the real economic threat.
As for those entering the race, a source says former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney is expected to launch his campaign next week. And BC's former Premier Christy Clark told CBC's The House she's considering it too, but wishes there was more time.
We're looking at the rules now before I make a final decision, but I think, we can make this work in the timeline that we've got.
Last night, the Liberal Party released a video setting the date and rules for the race to become the next leader. The entrance fee for candidates is $350,000, and registered Liberals voting are now limited to Canadian citizens and permanent residents, a change made to address concerns about foreign interference.
I am very confident in the processes and assurances that have been given to me that process will be one that ensures that only people who should be voting and people who we would want to see participating in a Canadian democratic process will be participating in that process.
Two relatively unknown candidates have already said they're running. Others who want the job have to declare it within the next 2 weeks. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
It's now official. Donald Trump will become the first person in history to become U.S. president with a criminal record. That is now a certainty after he was sentenced today and essentially let off scot-free for his role in the so-called hush money case. Katie Simpson has the details from New York.
This is a remarkable day in American history. Donald Trump, the president-elect, is now a convicted felon. That is a result of what happened inside a Lower Manhattan courthouse today. The judge in this case, Juan Marchand, giving Donald Trump an unconditional discharge. That means while he is technically a convicted felon, there's no punishment that comes along with that. No fines, no probation, no jail time. And that was what was expected in this case. The judge citing the unique circumstances here before him. Never before has an American president been a convicted felon, or has there ever been any sort of situation like this before the courts in the United States.
The protections afforded the office of the president are not a mitigating factor. They do not reduce the seriousness of the crime or justify its commission in any way. The protections are, however, a legal mandate, which, pursuant to the rule of law, this court must respect and follow.
Outside the courthouse, a handful of Donald Trump supporters gathered to express their frustration that Trump was ever charged to begin with, and some relief that he won't be facing any sort of punishments.
It doesn't really matter, okay? In terms of the American public, most of the American public, we don't care, okay? In all likelihood, this is going to be overturned, so it'll ultimately be irrelevant.
It makes me feel actually very sad because the judge who's giving him this record that he doesn't deserve should be the one behind bars because he's actually the corrupt person in this whole matter.
Donald Trump was found guilty on 34 felony charges related to hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, who, of course, is an adult film star. Donald Trump denied that he did anything wrong. He summarized everything as bookkeeping errors, and we heard a similar tone from the president-elect today.
This has been a weaponization of government. They call it lawfare. Never happened to any extent like this, but never happened in our country before. And I'd just like to explain that I was treated very, very unfairly.
Donald Trump will be returning to the White House in less than 2 weeks, and his supporters that we've been speaking with are very excited, and they're not necessarily seeing this as a setback. They're just looking forward to the next Trump administration. Katie Simpson, CBC News, New York.
A verdict is expected soon in a shocking case in India that triggered nationwide calls for new laws to protect medical staff. A young doctor was attacked and killed last August while at work at a hospital in Kolkata. And the trial of the main suspect has just ended. CBC's South Asia correspondent Salima Shivji has the details.
We deserve justice! She deserves justice!
The rallies are not as frequent, but the fury remains in Calcutta. 150 days after a trainee doctor was raped and murdered while at work. A brutal crime that horrified India. Many gathered here feel it's their duty to keep calling for justice.
Women, not only in India, but in whole world, we are not safe.
At the hospital where the 31-year-old doctor worked, a shrine in her memory. Posters and graffiti dot the sprawling grounds, denouncing the rape and what many see as a reluctance from authorities to investigate the crime fully. One man, a volunteer at the hospital, has been charged with rape and murder. His trial held behind closed doors with no media allowed in. A verdict is expected next week. But 2 others arrested for failing to protect the crime scene, a hospital administrator and a senior police officer, were released last month. That angered the victims' parents, who we can't identify. They're convinced more people were involved in their only child's murder.
Her mother and father is on, severe pain.
And relying on their daughter's colleagues, this fellow trainee doctor says, to push for a stiff sentence if the accused is found guilty.
Everyone should get fear after this, getting, showing the punishment. That's the one part. And second part
is... A harsher sentence will make people think twice before
they do
not
twice, 1,000 times they should think.
And when the protest was...
For others here, the past 5 months have been marred by fears over safety.
How can a murder happen inside the hospital on duty? How can we feel safe when we do duty? I'll be doing my internship in 3 years. How will I feel safe?
She says many dorms at the teaching hospital still have little to no security, with change painfully slow to arrive. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Mumbai.
As we heard earlier, powerful winds continue to fuel massive fires in the Los Angeles area. And as bad as those fires have been, even more devastation is expected in the years ahead across the globe. Susan Ormiston explains.
A smoky dawn reveals LA County's reckoning with deadly fire and changing climate.
This is absolutely an unprecedented historic firestorm.
And it was not out of nowhere. Santa Ana winds expected, but not at near hurricane levels, and they whipped up flames over bone-dry land. Since July, the second driest period in LA in over 150 years.
Normally, we should have a rainy season that begins predictably in November or at least December, and we've had nothing.
Morgan Tingley is a forest ecology scientist at UCLA. He can see the Palisades fire glow from his window.
It's Los Angeles today. It could be Toronto tomorrow and Vancouver the next day. The scale of what we're seeing is global. That is climate change.
The cause of the fire remains unknown, and it continues to be under active investigation.
What ignited the first flames? A mystery, but more explainable why they spread so hot. Scientists report that climate change caused by burning fossil fuels translates to a longer fire season and more intense, especially in Southern California.
The elements all come together to create kind of a perfect storm. And these conditions really allow wildfires to blow up and get really extreme, burn really fast, erratic, hot.
A picture that looks much like this, prompting shock and tears.
I just evacuated my house, packed all my things.
From people who've tried to connect the dots between climate and increasing disasters, this activist posted her frustration, then talked to us.
How many times have I sat here and watched other places, and now this time I am the place that other people are watching? This isn't just wildfires, this is hurricanes, this is floods. We are just the latest iteration and the latest casualty. It is incredibly upsetting. The fact that I can't sit here and say this will be a turning point.
To the contrary, a warning of more to come. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Toronto.
Earth recorded its hottest year ever in 2024. Weather monitoring agencies say the jump was so big the planet temporarily passed a major climate threshold, and many scientists see that increase as a tipping point. They say if temperatures continue to stay that high, we could experience intensifying wildfires, droughts, floods, hurricanes, and storm surges. Last year's temperature broke the previous record set in 2023 by just over 0.1 degrees Celsius. In the 2015 Paris Agreement, 196 countries agreed to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above that of pre-industrial times. The UN Secretary General issued a statement saying leaders must act now to avoid a climate catastrophe. Now, in its second year, the civil war in Sudan has claimed the lives of 15,000 people and displaced more than 8 million. The Canadian government has let in hundreds of refugees from the war-torn country, but they've let in thousands of other people from other troubled countries. Some members of the Sudanese community in Canada have accused the federal government of setting a double standard. David Coleman reports.
Nagwa El Mamoun spends hours each day speaking to the emotional and anxious in her own Sudanese Canadian community. They're desperate for any news the immigration consultant can relay about escape from the war between militias, which has now killed 15,000 in their homeland, leading to war crimes, displacement, and starvation. Some are waiting to escape to Canada. As they do, Nagwa says their hope is dwindling.
We have applicants that died because lack of medication, died because they were killed.
After war broke out in Ukraine, 300,000 Ukrainians were admitted to Canada. From Afghanistan, 40,000. From Syria, 25,000 just in the first 100 days. But so far from Sudan, Canada has approved just 340, and only 55 have actually made it.
While I'm saying to Canada, thank you very much for putting the program together, but if this is humanitarian and compassionate basis, then do what you did for other nations. Get them here as quickly as possible.
Ismail Adam has put money down, as required by Ottawa, to support his own family's escape from Sudan. The Bay Street tech worker can't understand why the delay, especially as the death count spirals.
It's very problematic and it's racist. Why is
McGill University's head of African Studies, Khalid Madani, is willing to say out loud what others in the community whisper.
We have to be clear about the minuscule amount of Sudanese immigrants and refugees who benefited from this program, and people are dying.
Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada tells CBC News it's committed to a fair and non-discriminatory application of immigration procedures. But it did not explain whether and when more Sudanese Canadians might be able to have their families out of harm's way and with them in this country. David Coleman, CBC News, Mississauga, Ontario.
The Canadian economy registered large job gains in December, StatsCan reported today, far exceeding expectations. Education, finance, and transportation led the way to a net increase of 91,000 jobs, more than triple what economists had predicted. That lowered the unemployment rate by 0.1%. Public sector jobs accounted for over 40% of the increase. Overall, the employment rate rose, albeit amid slowing population growth for the first time since January 2023. There's growing concern about the safety of personal information belonging to Canadian children. Hundreds of schools across Canada and the U.S. have been hit by a major cyber attack, and data belonging to both staff and students may have been leaked. As Deanna Sumanak-Johnson reports, it's part of a troubling pattern.
Toronto father Jack Amendolia was sharing his concerns about an increasing number of cyber attacks at his son's school board when he got an email about a new breach. A major cyber incident involving PowerSchool, the application used by many school boards across North America to store a range of student information.
It could have been addresses and phone numbers, and so then they know, a child, a gender, an age, where that person lives.
This breach, affecting hundreds of thousands of families across the country, is the latest in a string of high-profile cybersecurity incidents hitting Canadian schools. Last month, Pembina Trails School Division in Winnipeg was hit by a cyber attack that, among other things, compromised personal information of students and paralyzed email and phone systems.
For us, that basically shut down everything we use, computers, PA systems, attendance online, there was no internet.
Gone are the days of signed paper forms. Information about everything from medical history to the names of people who are allowed to pick children up are submitted online. And all that makes schools and information about children prized prey for cyber criminals.
These are fresh identities. They take an address, a phone number, and a name, and can create a synthetic social insurance number and try to apply for things like loans online.
School boards or parents can also be asked for ransom money. Experts say one silver lining is cyber attacks often result in better security, like two-step authentication. Ween suggests parents push back if they're asked to provide information that seems excessive.
Limiting the information and where you put the information and what information you give out is key, and asking tough questions.
Something Amendolia intends to do as parents and educators grapple with how to bring schools into the digital age while safeguarding kids' data. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's main stock index fell more than 300 points despite strengths in energy stocks as the price of oil climbed. Here's a look at the numbers as we head to break. Yeah, for early January, we can't complain about this weather.
No, definitely not. This time of year, of course, can be very unsettled and very stormy. And I mean, this week, really, while there was no major storm overhead, there was certainly a major storm over Newfoundland, and dropped all kinds of snow in Cape Breton and the Highlands, and it was a week for sure. Lots of wind, but a calmer weekend, which is great. We do deserve it. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day. This one, we're going to zoom in on the valley, and there was some very light snow when... Yeah.
You don't often see one snowflake, right?
You're right. Jeff, it was Jeff that wrote the email that said, yeah, there was very light snow, and he was going out and trying to find a shot like this.
That's
but
amazing.
It's obviously a really difficult shot to take, a difficult shot to find.
He knocked it out of the park.
He certainly did. Thank you very much, Jeff Dalton. Really appreciate it. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. Okay, so Saturday in the valley and all across the province, nice and quiet, winds light. Still a bit of a breeze in the morning for you folks in Cape Breton, but the winds will ease into the afternoon there. And yeah, just a light afternoon wind, which is great. Temperatures will bump up around the freezing mark, maybe as mild as 2 degrees and through the metro area and back towards the Yarmouth area as well. Now, as we look at Sunday's forecast, cloudier skies. Chances for flurries. The best chance is going to be in through the northeast again. The northerly winds are going to be a bit stronger on Sunday, but again, not nearly as strong as they've been throughout the week. Now, as we look at the outlook, you can see there are those flurries into the forecast for Sunday, particularly in through the northeast, and then remaining quiet into Monday and next week. Well, we'll look at some flurries for Tuesday into Wednesday. No major systems on tap.
Very good. All right. Thanks, Ryan. Well, some elementary school students in Fredericton just wrapped up a pretty cool class project. Have a look at this. That is a fully functioning 3D printed electric guitar, an exact replica of a Fender Stratocaster. The grade 5 class has been building it piece by piece for the past several months. It's made almost entirely of plastic.
Some parts, like the neck, bridge, and input jack, were upcycled from other used guitars. So the students say they chose the combination of bright colors because they didn't want the guitar to look boring. They say it was not an easy project, but they are pretty excited about the result, as they should be.
They sure should be. Well, that's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time.
Good night.